Hello, everybody, and welcome to Soul Whisperings vlog. I'm Monica Morrissey, owner of Intuitive Wellness, and today we have a special guest that I am super excited to connect with because part of it, the excitement is that you're local, like you're
Yes.
here in Vermont. And so, I love to highlight people that are right in our area. I have like goosebumps right now. I'm so excited to meet you and connect with you over the past few months. This is Ashley Carey, and she is the owner of Soul. Wait, oh my goodness, I've forgotten the name of your business
That's
now.
right. It's Sapphire Soul Healing.
Sapphire Soul Healing. And she helps hold space for inner child healing advocate, intuitive development expert, and psychic medium. She offers support, intuitive support that awakens your inner child so that you can transform physical, mental, and emotional tension into playful energy that attracts what you want. And welcome.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm just as excited as you are to be here.
Yeah. So I loved when I asked you the question, how does your topic inspire others? Your answer said it connects people to the little parts inside of them that need healing while bringing messages that inspire change, growth, and release.
Mm.
So tell me a little bit more about this inner child work, or, how did you kind of get into this?
Yeah, so it's an interesting story, and I'm going to condense it into the smallest version of the story that I possibly can. But as many of us have, my childhood was good, but also there were some, now that I've experienced the healing that I have, my parents experienced things that they needed deep healing from, and they were 20 when they had me, so as you can imagine, there was some really bumpy parts of childhood for me. I also experienced, some traumatic things that kind of just really stifled me emotionally, and then I also had spiritual experiences at the earliest age that I can remember is age 4, so, all of that kind of oh, kitty.
Oh, can you hear there? I
My dog always barges in on me when I'm doing spiritual talks, every time.
There's they're fighting and they don't usually fight.
Yep,
So it's
they know.
they feel the energy.
Yes, so funny. But yeah, so I kind of stifled out my feelings, and so, um, I kind of started feeling the pressures of that when I was in a corporate job and feeling the same kind of stifled feeling, um, and realized that I wasn't really doing what I was meant to be doing. Um, and then I got married, got pregnant, got fired all in like
Mm.
3 weeks of each other.
Oh my goodness.
So that kind of forced me into this like place of really looking at myself
Mm.
and what I wanted and who I wanted to be, um, for my child and the things that I didn't want to repeat, um, that were in my childhood. And so I really kind of launched myself into this. Well, it was a spiritual awakening of sorts, and then it kind of launched me into this personal development. And um, it was really interesting because everything kind of just showed up to me. I didn't really go looking for anything. When I started to heal, I started to remember things that I had forgotten. I had forgotten that I had these spiritual experiences as a child. I'd forgotten that I was, you know, able to do these things, and something that scared me as a child is now something that gives me life. Like,
Mm.
doing this work and being able to provide messages from past loved ones and really taking people deep into their, healing with their inner child and how the 2 actually correlate with clearing out that space. Um, as you're healing with your inner child, you're making space for your intuition. So these gifts that may look like to you that other people have that you don't have are actually things that we all have access to. And so in through my work, I'm looking to bring those out of people so that they can show up with those gifts in the world in the way that they're supposed to. So that's really like how I healed anxiety. I still struggle with anxiety sometimes, but like I was able to heal a lot of anxious parts of myself. Um, just really like stepping into who I am as a person, and owning those things as opposed to kind of trying to fit in or, you know, just that sense of wholeness that we all think is elusive. And I think it fluctuates for me. Sometimes I feel that sense of wholeness greatly, and then other times it's not as prominent, but it's I can get back to that place much more quickly than I ever could. So
Mm.
it's really just about um, looking at those stories that came to be in our adolescent mind, and as an adult, coming back and looking at those things and saying what is it that I actually believe, because you'll start to feel that things are not true anymore for you, and that's kind of your signal to bring yourself to that spot of recognizing those stories and creating new ones.
I love that. So I can relate to a lot of your story, to be honest, and to be like, I know that I was connected when I was young. Like, I
Yeah,
saw these floating bubbles of light outside my window and I was like talking to them. Like, I know that those were spirits visiting me. Right.
yeah,
And so, like, I had this connection. But at the time, of course, I was born a little bit before you, in the late
yes.
60s, right? And 70s, that was like shut down, right? Like that
Mm.
was socially not acceptable. It's becoming more acceptable now, but we still have a lot of doubters and questions, and that's okay. And then we go to school, right? And so like if we go back to that, like before your age 6 or 7, I like to talk about it being part of your subconscious,
Mhm.
right? And that we don't even know that it's running in there. And so, like when I started to like, okay, I got to heal something here, I started realizing that, like, oh, I was a people pleaser. Oh, well, I could track that back to my family dynamics in my household. And like like I had an okay childhood. Like, my parents did the best they could, but they didn't know how to parent. They didn't know how to talk about emotions, and they didn't know how sensitive I was, right? Like
Right.
I was super sensitive. And so like I was picking up on the energy, and I was like thinking it was my job to make everybody happy, right? And I still catch myself doing that, like
Mhm.
trying to, go make everybody happy. And so, like, that's the work that you do. Like, you don't even realize that it's running there until you kind of bring it to the surface and kind of question your thoughts and, like, what's going on here that I'm not understanding. And so it sounds like, that's just a simple example, but like, is that kind of what you're talking about with some of the work?
Yeah, so I'll try to give an example. So when I was at the corporate job that I was at, um, and was fired,
Mhm.
um, there were things that were being brought up and said that where I was like, "They can't be talking about me, like, that doesn't sound like me at all." Like, if and then there were other examples in my life too where I was just, there would someone would bring something up and I'm like, I like feel like I did respond that way, like that was an accurate depiction of how I responded, but it didn't feel like who I was as an actual person. So when your responses and like deeply who you are don't align,
Mhm.
it's because there is something subconsciously running that your soul feels like it needs to protect against, or your body or your mind feels like it needs to protect against a threat that maybe really actually isn't there, right?
Mm,
So I then had to be like, okay, if this is the experience that other people are bringing to me of me, but I don't feel like that's who I am, then I need to bridge this gap somewhere, right? So I started just looking at how I was responding to things and if that was really how I wanted to respond. And then from there, it was just that's the power of awareness, right? When we start to actually look at that, okay, so now I know it's there. I know that these reactions and responses are there. I like some of them and I don't like others. So why am I responding to these things in ways that I don't like?
mm,
And then you just kind of from there, you're like, what's triggering that?
mm.
And where did it come from? It's so I think for me, it was just that, just being like, feeling like I was two different people at the same time.
Yeah. So what I tuned in, like when we were talking, because I just left public education, so kind of
Mm,
corporate-ish
yeah.
job a couple of years ago. And one of the things that was my integrity, like I found my integrity in here. And I
Mhm,
was like, ooh, it's not matching what I do every day. I loved my job. I loved it for 32 years and I loved being in the classroom and I loved helping kids. I just love kids. But there was something, education has changed since I went into it. But what you're talking about, I like to call the pause.
mhm. Yes.
Right? There's
Yes.
magic in that because you're observing yourself. And what you were saying is your actions didn't match your insides, right? Because you were coming out of that defense mechanism, that, fight or flight or whatever it is that's kind of triggering your nervous system to go into like whatever response that you need to do and do it quickly. But that pause gets you in line with this. And I like to say it's my gut, my heart, and my head all
Mhm.
matching, right? Like, and then if you pause, then you're coming into that alignment.
It's funny, I actually teach this in a similar way, and I call it I don't know if I necessarily call it a pause or not, but I can't remember, but how I describe it is like if you wanna pivot something in your life, right? You're
Mm,
wanting to make a pivot, so I'm, like, realizing, "Okay, this is how I'm responding, I need to pivot this and go the other way." And so when we try like, what happens if you try to pivot without stopping?
mm,
You'll fall on your face.
mm-hmm.
But you can't do it. You
Yep.
have to stop first, turn, and go a different way. So energetically, that's what these shifts that people talk about, or the aha moments, or the transformation, all the buzzwords that the spiritual community uses for this type of thing. They can't happen without that part.
Mm-hmm. And some of
Unless
that,
you wanna fall on your face, 'cause you
right.
and you
And so,
might, and you might, and I have, and
and
it's okay.
yeah. So what I'm hearing is that stopping. And what I like to say too, when I'm working with clients, is that you can't just pause in that moment. You have to stop your brain at different points of your day. So that's
Mhm,
meditation or being quiet or going for a walk. All those things are practicing that quiet mind. And because if you're not going to quiet your mind, you're not going to practice, you're not going to shoot the goal in the soccer unless you're practicing, right? You got to dribble, you got to pass, you got to do all those things. And so, like, all those tools in the toolbox of trying to quiet that mind is what helps that pause for me.
mhm.
And if you're not doing that work, then you're just going to go on that subconscious programming that you've been running on. And I can look back at my life and I can really see when I was running on that and when I was actually making, like you said, I love that stop, pivot. Did you find, so let's go to, I just had a thought, sorry. Um, that pivot and tuning back in and healing some of those parts of you that needed to be healed and all those things. Then you started tuning back into your mediumship skills. So tell me about the process of that, because I know that you encourage other people that we all have this ability. We just haven't used it enough. And tell me a little bit more about that journey.
Yeah, so like I said, I had some experiences when I was younger that kind of shut things down. I had kind of when I finally opened up and I went through the spiritual awakening and I started to things started kind of popping up for me, like Reiki workshops and things like that that I started to do, and then I did a year-long shamanic apprenticeship. Um, that that kind of showed up at the right time that I needed it to in my life too, and just through that apprenticeship, I realized that I kind of realized where my gifts stood in that moment, in those moments, because I was working, it was a group thing. So I was working with a lot of different people and their gifts were showed up differently. And so some could see these vivid things, they could close their eyes and go into a meditation and see all of these things. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that at all. I would feel things are I my highest clair ability is knowing. Like I just will know something and I don't know why I know it or how I know it, but I just know it and it's just that's my like strength in with intuitive abilities. So I've always been interested in mediumship. I've always felt very connected to it in a very strange way. Not just like interested in it, I believe in that, that's really cool, but like a knowing of sorts. And so I really struggled because I wanted to do it so badly. I knew that I was supposed to do it, but I couldn't do it. And so I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, how am I supposed to do it if I can't do it? And if I know I'm supposed to do it, like it was just very confusing. And I think a lot of people get to this place when they're even just tuning into their own intuition, not even psychic abilities, not even mediumship abilities, just even intuition in general. And what I have come to learn the hard way that I try to help people know before they're learning the hard way is that I had to let go of what I couldn't do and tune into where I was really strong and develop there. So we've tend to be like, "Oh, I kind of am intuitive. How do I like make this how do I like grow this stronger?" Well, where are you already strong? That's when you're talking about energetics, you don't want to look at where you are not
Mm.
because you will get more of what you're not. That's just energetically. If you're looking to like if you're doing a sport, then yeah, you might want to look at where you have to practice more to get better in an area so that you can play the sport better. But energetics, that's not how it works. The physical body needs that, but energetically we need to go where we're already strong and develop there, and then that actually opens up space for the other abilities to come through. That has been my experience in intuitive development, um, in my story, and how I've helped my clients with their intuitive development, um, and just what I know about energetics. So I just started to be like, okay, that's going to come. I'm going to just focus where I'm really strong. And I started doing readings and I just did them based on how I felt strong in those moments. And then information about past loved ones just started coming in, and I had to do it scared, and I had to trust it even when I was wrong, because it was teaching me something. And like what you were saying earlier, you were able to look back on your life and see where you've made these changes. You don't see the changes until you look back. Hindsight is where you see the changes. You're not going to feel some big, crazy, like, change, and you're going to wake up one day and you're like, oh my gosh, everything has changed in my life because I'm healed. Like, that's not how it works.
Mhm.
But you're going to be put in a situation with your family, and you're going to respond different, and you're going to see them reacting to you differently. And then you're going to be like, okay, this is it. Hindsight.
Mhm.
Or we can look at hindsight and be like, oh, I was wrong, and beat yourself up over it. But really, hindsight is a teacher.
Mm.
And when we work with it everything's energy. So hindsight is energetic, and you can work with it or you can work against it. You can resist it or you can work with it. And I choose to work with hindsight because that's where your validation is going to come from, is your own hindsight. And you can look at hindsight as a teacher, or you can look at, see, told you, it could say, I told you so. Like, I told you were wrong. Right. But whenever I've been wrong in the development aspect of my intuition or psychic abilities or mediumship, it's always, okay, what was that feeling, and what came through, and what was it trying to tell me? Like, what was that intuitive hit trying to tell me? Because I mean, you get signs and symbols and things that you have to decipher. It's not a conversation like we're having right now. It's images, it's energy that you're feeling, it's things that you're seeing, it's things that you just know, and then you're trying to piece them all together.
I say that it's kind of like playing charades, and you're trying to guess exactly what the meaning behind whatever it is. So a couple of different things. First of all, like I feel like there's like a little bit of schooling going on there about like, am I going to be able to do it? Am I going to be able to do it correctly? Am I going to get the A plus? Like there's
Yep.
that programming, right? That we're always seeking that outside validation to say like, you can do this. And, every time it's going to work. Right. But that's not how spiritual energetics works. Right. And then the other thing that's coming up for me is when I hear you talking about, making a mistake. So it's my understanding, and correct me if you believe differently, is that when you're getting messages or something from the other side, it sometimes doesn't always make sense at that moment.
Mhm.
And because time is not linear, even though we have calendars and clocks and all those things, right? In the spiritual world, everything's connected and everything's one. And so like I tell my clients when I'm, giving them a message that like this might make sense next week or next month. And then sometimes they come back. And so like sometimes I don't always take it as incorrect or wrong, but like it just the energy hasn't been there, or they forget, right? Like in the moment they might forget something. So I want to just touch base with really quickly, and then I want to go on to a different subject, is how did it feel like telling people, I'm a medium? Like, because there is this, stigma, like I still see in movies, people making, jokes about the psychic or jokes about the mediumship. And it just, it triggers me, of course, because I'm like, this is really true. Like, why can't people get their, heads around this? Like, how did that, because you were in touch with it when you were young and now you're, tuning in. Like, what's that like for you? Do you mind sharing?
No, not at all. It was terrifying. I hid for a very long time.
Mm.
So I have a Facebook group and I kind of would just hang out in there because I knew like those people were there because they believe and understand what I do or they're interested in it in some way. So that felt safe, safe to me. Um, and then over time, I think because so I still get those thoughts every time I do a
Mhm.
reading. Like, is anything gonna come through? Are they gonna understand it? Do they like do I even know what I'm talking about? Am I making it up? Like all that stuff comes up still every time. I've been shown so many times that I have an evidential aspect of my mediumship that is makes it so that I can't not believe in it. I have to believe in it because it doesn't make sense that I would know the things that I know or that the things that came up could come up out of nowhere. So, I think that because I kept doing it scared, even though I was scared, I still did it because I knew that I was meant to do this. Over time, I think I just got the validation that this is real and this is part of who you are and what you offer to the world and what you're supposed to be doing. And if somebody, I also healed a lot of parts of myself that didn't fit in or, you know, felt outcasted or felt like uh, just the person who kind of my energy kind of makes people face themselves. And so my whole life it's been like that. So I've pushed a lot of people away unintentionally because just of how my energy is. So it did create stories of like all those stories. So those things come up when you're trying to put yourself out there in such a big way. Uh,
Mhm.
I mean, even doing a live video for me 5 years ago when I was in my Facebook group, like I couldn't barely do it. I had a full body experience when I would try to go live. Like I would, my whole body would shake, my heart would pound, my palms would get sweaty, my stomach would start hurting. Like I couldn't speak. Like my words wouldn't come out. I would fumble words. Like it was interesting, I guess, because I'm not a very shy person, but like putting myself out there is for people to see and for it's vulnerable and that so that part of it I had to work on my relationship with vulnerability the most I think out of anything ever um, because when I had the traumatic experiences as a child and the spiritual experiences I shut off emotion
Mm.
so I didn't feel things at all. Some things I would literally just be it would be nothing. There'd be nothing there. So my process into this has been turning my emotions back on.
Mm.
That's been my ultimately that's been my work.
I
And
love
when I did that, that's when all of this stuff started happening again.
that. And so you help people, correct? You have like a mediumship, you have several different offers. Tell us about your offers and where we can find you.
Yeah, so I have a group on Facebook called Inner Child Healing with Ash. It's pretty easy to find, so I think you should be able to find it. I do lots of things in there. I pop in and do live readings sometimes. I talk about all kinds of different topics. Um, we have every day there's a um, certain topic of the day that you can come and engage with. Um, my offerings, I have a website, www.sapphiresoulhealing.com. And right now I'm offering 30-minute and 1 hour Reiki sessions. And my Reiki sessions are a little bit different than maybe other people's Reiki sessions just because if I'm touching you, I'm getting psychic information and mediumship information. So
Yeah.
messages do come through during those healing sessions.
I
Um,
yeah, I do the same thing.
yeah, I can have that not happen if somebody is not wanting to be open to that.
Mhm.
I can shut it off, but generally that's just something that happens. So I offer those forms of Reiki. I do house clearings. So if you're moving into a new house or you are feeling like stagnancy within your home or there's argumentative energy or something traumatic happened, like we can clear the energy out and kind of reset it. I've done a couple of those that have been really cool.
Mhm.
Um, I offer psychic mediumship readings. So that's specifically tuning into messages that you either need for your um, well being, for yourself and your healing, paired with messages from past loved ones coming in as well. And then I also offer one on one packaging. So within the packaging, we can focus on healing, we can focus on where I do a lot of inner child work. We can focus on intuitive development. I just released um, a client after working with her for 3 months on intuitive development. She is amazing. Um, and I reserve my shamanic energy work offerings for my one on one packaging. So there's a whole array of like 7 different shamanic energy work options that kind of filter into the one on one work. Um, I think that's it. I think that's
And
all.
and mediumship training, correct?
Intuitive development, if somebody's looking to either hone in on their psychic gifts or just kind of relate to their intuition on a different level or develop their mediumship, I can do any and all of that. But I will tell you that there will be inner child healing involved because that is how to do that.
Yeah, it's the core, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't even understand, I wish I'd known as a parent
Mm.
when my
Yeah.
kids were little, like, and it can be something little, right? Like, that inner child healing, I just wanna point out, it can be somebody grabbing their hand when they're about to run into the road.
Yeah.
So the adult is doing the right thing by trying to keep that child safe, but it's those little moments that, like, it just gets imprinted onto us, and so
Yep.
I just want people to be aware that, like, we've all got it rolling around in there. And
Yes.
so are you ready to, bring it to the forefront in order to, like, help yourself? Like,
Yeah.
right? This is about self-love. And so if you're willing to do that work and show up, then Ashley's here to help you. So thank you, Ashley, for coming on today and sharing your story. It's so inspiring, and I look forward to connecting with you more.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.